Hey up and welcome to the video. I shoot RAW because it gives me the best control of capturing the image from camera to the final output. So, camera settings on the Nikon D850. We obviously choose RAW. There's a few different options there, as you can see. Then in the RAW options, we can also choose the size of the RAW, and I choose the largest. You've then got another option which is 14-bit or 12-bit. I don't know why you choose the 12-bit, so I go 14 because it's got a big advantage over the 12. And the only other setting you can look at is setting the picture control in the menu, and this doesn't affect the RAW file when you get it on the computer. It only affects the preview on the back of the camera. So I choose flat preview. So what I see on the back of the screen is what I'm going to see at the beginning of the editing process. Let's get into the editing of some images. I've picked 6 different images to process. We'll try and get all 6 done, as long as it's not a super long video. And just a bit of a disclaimer before we start: if I sent these 6 images to 6 different photographers, they would all process the images slightly different. Every single person will have their own way of processing images, their own look that they want to get, their own crop decision, their amount of colour. So what I'm going to show you doesn't mean it's the only way, it doesn't mean it's the right way, it's just the way I am to do it. So we load our images onto the computer and we put them into Lightroom, and this is library view, and when you see the images in library view you're looking at the raw image. This is what the file looks like straight out of the camera. So let's pick an image to edit. Let's take this one here, and this is in library view. When we move it to develop, it makes a change. So Lightroom gives it a color profile and it gives it Adobe Color. Now I don't like that. I prefer Adobe Landscape. Adobe Landscape pops some color in for you to use. When I first see the image on screen, I start to think how I want to edit it. What changes am I going to make to this image to make it how I want it to look? And that's quite important, and that's where we all do things slightly different. So the first thing I'm going to do with this image is straighten it, because Mr. Schoolboy Error didn't check his camera was level. So we'll level it now using the crop tool, put it to there. We'll also think of how we want to crop this. So there's not much happening in the sky, so we're definitely going to crop some of that out. And there's too much of this sort of rocky area in the bottom of the screen. So the rocks as well that are sitting there don't do anything for the composition. The main interest is in the middle of the screen here, where we've got the trees and the reflection into Derwent Reservoir. So I'm going to remove these rocks. Okay, so the rocks have gone. Now we're going to apply a crop. I'm going to take away some of the sky at the top there, because the sky is not great. We're just going to drop that down to there. Then we're going to bring the bottom line up, so we minimise this area where we've got these rocks on the shoreline. I think that's enough. I think I'm happy with that. Now we'll bring the highlights down next, right down to the bottom, -100. We'll put the whites up to plus 20-ish, and we'll bring the blacks down to minus 30, and that reflection is looking really nice in the water there. Overall, it still does look a little bit bright, so we'll just bring the exposure down by minus 20, and as an edit, that's already looking pretty nice. Let's just put clarity, just plus 10, and dehaze also plus 10 as well. And the dehaze has sort of saturated the colours a little bit more in the scene. Okay, do we want to do anything else with this? We do. I want to put a radial gradient across this area here because the light was coming from the left, and I want to very much bring more light there, so we'll push the exposure up a little. We'll put the white up by 10, takes the black down by 20. We'll put a little bit of warmth in, so we'll add, let's see, an extra 10 of colour temperature in, just to make that central area look nice and warm. And we'll just pull that out a little bit. And do I want to do anything with the colours? Are the greens okay? You know what? They're looking nice. And you tend to reach the point with an image, or I do, where I think, that's it. I don't need to do any more with that. I'm happy with it. And all I'm going to do now is just add sharpening. So we'll go 80-ish amount, masking around 70, and we'll drop in a small vignette. Maybe I'll just do something with the sky. Oh, because you can change your mind. So let's just put a, no, in fact, let's select the sky. We'll let Lightroom select the sky. And we'll just bring the exposure down. So the sky we've got in the scene, at least, is, you can see some of the clouds in there. We'll maybe just lighten it up a little, and then just drop the blacks down. Maybe brighten it back. Maybe take the highlights down. Okay, I think I'm going to live with that. That is it. That's the final edit on there. Okay, let's have a look at the before, which was there, and let's have a look at the after, which is there. Pretty happy with that. Quite a straightforward image, very little editing. Happy days. Okay, on to the next one. So we're in library mode, into develop, Adobe landscape, and in the back of my mind, I think I'm going to make this black and white because there is colour in the trees. If we bring the exposure up, you can see that the sensor has captured some colour there, but what we've got in the left hand side of the image is very monochrome tones. There's no colour there, so I think I'm going to edit this as a black and white. So we'll change to Adobe monochrome. We'll push the shadows up to about 85 on this. We'll bring the highlights down so we can see what's happening in the sky. The sky looks very nice. Next, we're going to apply a crop. We want to reduce the amount of sky from above, and we want to reduce the amount of water we can see there. Happy with the crop. Let's just push the whites up a little, blacks down just a shade, clarity. We'll add clarity because that puts contrast into the scene. We'll plus 20 clarity, and we'll put some dehaze in, and we'll make that plus 15. Now the sky at the top there is still bright, so we'll take a linear gradient and drop that down and just reduce that amount of light in the sky. Take the highlights down and take that down. We'll just tilt it because it is affecting there. Happy with that. And all the light interest in this scene was on the left hand side. So now we're going to take a radial gradient and pop that down here, probably to there. I'm going to push the exposure up. Just take the highlights back a little. Just push the whites up a tad. And then the blacks down a little. And that's emphasised the light on that right hand side. And then finally, the final steps, we'll add sharpening to 80, masking to 70 or thereabouts. And these changes don't have to be add on. If you say, oh, we're going to apply 80, it can be 79 or 81. It doesn't make that much difference. And probably 10 vignette. Yeah. And that gives us the final image. We might want to brighten up this right hand side a little. Let's just try a linear gradient. Or actually not, let's just try, let's pick the brush tool, quite a big brush, and just brush in a little bit of light on there, on those trees. But again, not too much. You'll find if you're too heavy-handed with these sliders, it don't look natural. A bit more maybe there, higher up, and a bit more there. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Happy, done, finished. So the image before looked like this, and the final edit looks like that. Happy with that. Next image, this is a view looking down on Edale in the Peak District. So we'll apply Adobe Landscape. And this is quite evenly lit. There's some detail in the sky, so this should be a fairly quick edit. I'm going to apply crop first. And we're going to take, in fact, we'll go for a square crop. And we're going to put that just there. Okay, we're going to bring the whites up on this. We're going to bring the blacks down, shadows up so we get some detail on those on the stone wall. Little bit of clarity, not much, just plus 9 or 10. Dehaze plus 10. And I think the lower half of the image, I like the colours because we've used Adobe Landscape. The sky now wants some attention, so we'll just shrink the image down a little and we'll select a linear gradient and we'll just have that graduating towards the bottom of the skyline. Now let's bring the exposure down, and that's putting a bit of drama into the sky. Let's just bring that down a little bit further. Okay, we'll push the whites up, blacks down, and that's giving quite a dramatic but natural looking sky. I think I'm happy with that. We'll then come down, sharpening 80, masking 70, and just a 10, minus 10. Vignette. Very quick edit, that one. Very simplistic. The light was nice and even. And let's look at the before, where we started, and let's have a look at the final image. Happy with that. Okay, still in eDale, and let's change to Adobe Landscape. And in this scene, the light was coming from the right-hand side. We've got a nice barn sitting in the field. We've got a hillside backdrop, and the sky is quite nice as well. It's quite pastel-y looking. But I want to bring some light onto these trees for sure, and bring some light onto the barn. Reduce the amount of space. This field doesn't look very nice where it's been trampled on by the sheep. So we'll immediately do a crop, and we'll put the crop there, just so the barn is sitting on the thirds line, and then we'll come down to there just so the line is touching the top of the barn, and that's going to make the scene nice and even. Everything's in a good position for us to process. So let's first bring the shadows up. Okay, bring the whites up, bring the blacks. I think we'll bring the blacks up slightly. We'll go clarity plus 20. We won't touch dehaze. We will. We'll put dehaze slightly plus 10. We'll just bring the exposure up a little bit. Do we want to change the white balance? No, I'm quite happy with the white balance. I want to emphasize this line of light here. That's nice, going across the bottom of the scene. So what we'll do next is we'll take a linear gradient and we'll come up from the bottom. We'll angle it so it darkens the field below that line of light. Now I want to put some extra light onto the barn, so we're going to use a brush for that, a much smaller brush. Okay, and we'll just brush in part of the roof and the side there, and then we'll put the exposure up a little, a bit more brushing to make it even, and we'll also add some warmth. We'll push the colour temperature over just to make that a bit warmer. Let's push the whites up a little. Happy with that. Sky. Let's choose the sky. So we'll select the sky and we'll let Lightroom do its business here. So you can see the sky is selected. We'll bring the exposure down on the sky just so we can see a little bit of the blue and a little bit of the clouds themselves. Brighten up that, take the blacks down. Let's bring a bit of mood into that sky. And I think I'm happy with that. One thing left to do is these trees here, and we're going to use a radial gradient for that. And we're just going to place that carefully over the trees. Let's just turn it around a little to there, and let's just come out. Now let's increase the whites. the shadows. Let's just increase the colour temperature and make it a bit warmer. That looks a bit more natural. Let's okay, put a bit of contrast in. We'll put 10 contrast into that. We'll close that and we'll do a second radial gradient for this lower set of trees here. Again, we'll angle it down to there and just push the whites up a little. Blacks down, exposure up a little, too far, round about there. It just creates a bit of a difference with the light. Happy with that. 80 sharpening, 70 masking, and then we'll finish off with a 10 vignette there. Let's just look. Let's just push the exposure up a little, maybe to there, and I think let's just take the highlights back a little. I think I'm happy with that now. Maybe add a bit more colour in. Let's push the vibrance up, see what that does to the colour. Too much. Let's come back. We don't want to overcook it. So vibrance 15. Happy with that. Okay, let's do the final image then. So this was captured looking from Owler in the Peak District, and we had a situation where extreme light, just a bit like the Thirlmere shot. So again, we've got a really bright part in the image and we've got a dark part in the foreground, and you can see if I take the exposure up what was captured in the foreground, and if I go down with the exposure you can see the detail in the sky. We've still not, even though we was 2 stops under on this, we've not managed to get rid of the bright hot spot in the middle of the scene where the light was coming through. So we're going to have to live with that. But again, on this scene we need to balance the light out. So we'll push the exposure up a little. We've chosen Adobe Landscape, and the first thing we're going to do is work on the bottom half of the scene. So we'll take a linear gradient and we'll push the light up in the bottom. Let's make that a bit further. We'll push the whites up and we'll take the blacks down. Okay, then we'll take a brush and we're going to brush in some of the light that was catching some of the foliage and the rocks just here. So let's, the light was coming on there and it was just slightly catching that bit there, and it was catching this foliage here just a little bit. So let's push the exposure up, not too much, quite a subtle shadows up a little. Let's just brush a little bit more in to the scene. Okay, a bit more there on the rocks. And that, I think, is just about where the light was falling. Okay, so that's the foreground worked on. Now let's do some global adjustments. Let's just put global clarity in. In fact, no, let's not do, let's work on the sky first. So let's bring another gradient down on the sky. Let's lose the highlights right back Let's take the exposure back, and this is starting to bring out the detail in the sky, and that looks quite nice. We've got the sun rays coming out from the clouds lighting up the landscape. That's already looking pretty nice. Let's just do some global clarity now, +10, and some global dehaze, also +10. I just want to do a bit of work here on this cloud on the left hand side. So we'll take a radial gradient and just put that just there, and we'll take the blacks down on it, and that's going to bring out the detail in that cloud. And we'll also put a bit more clarity in, probably +10, and another +10 on dehaze. Let's just have a look at the before and after of that. And it's a subtle change, but it has brought out that detail in the cloud. And I think that is all I want to do on this. Let's just take global highlights down a little, but not too much. Yep, and then we'll finally come down and we'll apply sharpening, 80 to amount, and 70 to masking. And last job, vignette, -15 on that. And that looks very nice. That looks just as it did on the morning, as the light was just billowing out from the clouds, casting the light on the landscape. And I could have bracketed here, but it wouldn't have worked because the light was just moving too fast through the scene. So because I knew I was going to process raw, it was easier just to go 2 stops under on this scene. Okay, so that's raw editing from the Nikon D850, and it's not everybody's cup of tea to sit here at the computer hand processing every image. I'm sure many people love the JPEGs, but it does give you that total control right from capturing it in the camera to the final output, and that's what I love about shooting in RAW. And on that note, we'll end the video here, and we'll just look at these images in their final edit state. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later on the next one.